I attended my sister's baby shower, but when the attention shifted to me after my miscarriage, she falsely accused me of trying to poison her, and my parents believed her. But when my ex-BIL exposed the truth, their faces went pale, and her victim act finally crumbled. It's a horrifying feeling when your own family turns against you, especially when you're already shattered. My sister, the one I thought would always have my back, publicly accused me of trying to poison her at her own baby shower. And my parents, they sided with her without a second thought. But then my ex-brother-in-law Tyler dropped a bombshell that exposed the truth, and oh boy, her victim act came crashing down. 8 months ago my world shattered. My husband Aaron and I were ecstatic when we found out we were expecting. We talked endlessly about our future, planning out every detail of our baby's life, from what they'd look like to the kind of parents we'd become. Aaron was incredibly supportive, and we dove headfirst into transforming our spare room into a nursery, painting the walls and picking out furniture. I bought piles of books, devouring everything I could about pregnancy and motherhood. It was a time filled with so much joy and anticipation. Then, in an instant, everything changed. One late night, I woke up with this overwhelming sense of dread. There was no clear reason, just a deep, unsettling feeling that something was terribly wrong. I rushed to the bathroom, my heart pounding, and when I saw the blood, I just knew. I started sobbing uncontrollably, a level of panic and despair I can barely describe. Aaron rushed in, fear etched on his face, and without a word, he scooped me up and drove me to the hospital. That ride felt like an eternity, every second dragging. At the hospital, clinging to a sliver of hope, the doctor delivered the news no parent-to-be ever wants to hear. I had lost the baby. Those words were a physical blow, leaving me with an unbearable sense of loss. It was traumatic. Looking back, I don't know how Aaron stayed so strong because I was completely shattered. I couldn't function. I couldn't eat, sleep, or even talk. The world went dark, and I was trapped in a fog of grief. I had to take 2 weeks off work just to give myself permission to fall apart. Those weeks were a blur of tears and sadness, a heavy blanket that weighed me down. I barely left my bed. Every morning for a brief second I'd forget, and then reality would crash down again. All I wanted was to sleep just so I didn't have to feel the pain. My family really rallied around me during that time, and I'll always be grateful for it. My parents and sister called and stopped by constantly. My cousins brought food, trying to nourish me when I couldn't do it myself. But no matter how many people came or how much they cared, I was emotionally numb. Nothing anyone said could make the sadness go away. Through it all, Aaron was my anchor. He took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. He didn't push me to talk or pretend everything was okay. He was just patient, quietly supporting me. He brought me meals, sat with me in silence, and assured me we'd get through this, that we could try again when I'd healed. His faith was the only thing that kept me from completely sinking into despair. Slowly, agonizingly, I started to recover. It wasn't immediate and it wasn't easy. I went back to work, needing the distraction, a routine to pull me out of the endless loop of grief. But in the quiet moments, the sadness would return. I knew I needed more than just distraction, I needed connection. So I joined some Facebook groups for people who'd experienced miscarriages. Reading other people's stories, I realized I wasn't alone, that my feelings were normal, and that others had survived this unbearable loss. I started opening up, sharing my story, and slowly it began to make sense. I'm still grieving now, and I don't think that part will ever fully go away, but I've come to a place where I no longer constantly blame myself. That took time and a lot of emotional work. There were so many moments where I questioned if it was my fault, if I'd done something wrong. But now, I truly believe some things are just beyond our control. I've adopted this mindset of what's meant to be will be, and that perspective has brought me a sense of peace. I've worked hard on my healing, and I'm proud of that progress. But then something happened that completely shook me, almost undoing all the healing I'd worked so hard for. It happened at my sister Maggie's baby shower last week. For context, Maggie found out she was pregnant about 2 months ago. She announced it to the whole family immediately, but for some reason she didn't tell me. I had to find out from one of our cousins, which caught me completely off guard. Not because I wasn't happy for her, but because Maggie and I have always been close. She'd been there for me during my miscarriage, offering comfort and support when I needed it most. So naturally I was surprised and honestly a little hurt that she hadn't called me herself. When I talked to her about it later, I tried not to let my emotions get the better of me. I didn't want to make her feel bad, but I needed to understand. She explained that she didn't want to spoil my mood by announcing her pregnancy, knowing I was still grieving. I could tell she wasn't trying to hurt me. She just didn't want to add to my pain. In her mind, keeping the news from me was her way of protecting my feelings. But I reassured her, telling her that no matter what I was going through, I would always be happy for her. I made it clear that she should never feel like she couldn't share her joy with me just because of my grief. I told her that despite the sadness I carried, I would love her baby just as much. I was still going to be her baby's aunt, and I wanted to be part of this new chapter in her life. It was important to me that she knew my love for her, and her baby wasn't diminished by my loss. She seemed relieved and promised to keep me updated, which felt like a positive step forward. Over the past few weeks, I've made an effort to support Maggie as much as I can, especially since she's going through this pregnancy largely on her own. You see, Maggie is in the middle of a divorce from her husband, Tyler. The news of their divorce was a shock to everyone. I always thought Tyler was a decent guy. We'd even become good friends. He seemed so devoted to Maggie, always treating her with love and respect. I remember thinking how lucky she was. They always appeared happy together, which is why it was such a surprise when Maggie told us they were splitting up. Her reason was vague. Irreconcilable differences. She didn't elaborate, and whenever anyone pressed, she just said Tyler couldn't handle their marriage anymore. I felt like there was a missing piece, but Maggie didn't seem eager to discuss it, and I didn't want to push. All I knew was that Maggie needed support and I wanted to be there. I even went with her to some ultrasound appointments. Even though Maggie and Tyler are getting divorced, they've managed to stay cordial. That's probably why Maggie decided to hold her baby shower at Tyler's new place. He has a nice backyard, and she thought it would be perfect. Before the shower, Maggie invited my mom, some cousins, and me to lunch to help plan everything. We were excited. As we sat down, my cousins hugged me, comforting me about my miscarriage. They understood that grief isn't something you just get over, especially something as painful as losing a baby. They even mentioned how brave and selfless I was to be there for Maggie despite my own pain. But as we talked, I noticed Maggie's demeanor shift. She rolled her eyes and firmly told everyone to stop bringing up such heavy topics. She said we all needed to move on from my incident. Her words stung. I didn't like talking about it either, but her reaction felt cold. I figured she was just stressed and didn't want the conversation to shift away from her baby shower. Later that day, when I was dropping her off, Maggie joked that I was always stealing the spotlight from her after my miscarriage. Then she asked half seriously if I planned on doing the same at her baby shower. I was completely caught off guard. I asked her to clarify, and she explained that people seemed more concerned about me than her, and she felt brushed aside. She didn't want to feel that way during her shower. I immediately felt terrible and apologized. I assured her no one intended to make her feel less important, and I would do my best to make sure my miscarriage wouldn't come up. I didn't want to take away from her special day. Maggie didn't say much after that, just shook her head with disdain, and our conversation ended awkwardly. I understood Maggie wanted to feel supported, especially with the divorce, but I hadn't realized my loss had made her feel sidelined. The baby shower was 3 days ago. I did everything I could to keep the focus on Maggie and her baby. I didn't want any attention on me. This day was about her, and I wanted her to feel loved. But despite my efforts, several people still came up to me throughout the event, giving me warm hugs or gentle pats on the back. I know they meant well, but with each gesture I could feel Maggie's eyes on me. She didn't say anything, but I could sense her discomfort and irritation growing. I just wanted to enjoy the event, to celebrate my sister, but I was hyper-aware of how Maggie might be perceiving the situation. I also saw Tyler, my ex-brother-in-law, after what felt like ages. I hugged him and he seemed genuinely happy to see me. Felt like we were still on good terms. He even apologized for not being there for me after everything I'd been through, referring to my miscarriage. I brushed it off, understanding he and Maggie were going through their own issues. Tyler had lost weight, and there was a noticeable sadness in his eyes. It made me wonder how he was truly coping with the divorce. My husband, Aaron, was also at the shower, and he, Tyler, and the other men kept busy barbecuing and chatting. Everyone brought thoughtful gifts for Maggie. My cousin crocheted a beautiful blanket, my dad gifted a baby rocker, and my mom splurged on a brand new stroller. For my gift, I decided to give her some parenting books that had helped me, along with a baby shawl that held deep personal significance. This shawl was the very first thing I bought when I found out I was pregnant. I was on a trip to Istanbul when I saw it. A delicate, beautifully woven shawl I immediately fell in love with. I bought it picturing myself wrapping my baby in it. After I lost the baby, the shawl became bittersweet, tied to both my happiest memories and my greatest heartbreak. But I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. I wanted it to have a purpose, to be part of something good. So, I thought it might bring me some peace to pass it on to Maggie, hoping her baby could make good use of it. In my mind, it wasn't just a shawl. It was a gift filled with love and hope, and I thought it would bring happiness to both of us. However, when Maggie opened the gift and pulled out the shawl, she froze. Her expression shifted from surprise to outright anger. She stared at it as if it were tainted, then asked with visible frustration why I had brought it to her baby shower. I was confused and nervously tried to explain that it was special to me, and I wanted her baby to have it. I thought it was a personal gift that would come in handy. Everyone else admired the shawl's beauty, but Maggie didn't care about that. Her face grew angrier, and then, to my shock, she started accusing me of trying to curse her baby with my gift. I was completely taken aback. "What do you mean?" I asked. But before she could answer, my mother, who had been watching, spoke up. She said it was inappropriate for me to give Maggie something that was originally meant for my dead baby. She explained it wasn't right to pass down something linked to loss to a new life. Her words devastated me. I had never intended to offend my sister or make her uncomfortable. I genuinely thought I was offering something filled with love and meaning. I quietly took the shawl back and apologized, trying to keep my composure, even though inside I was shattered. But Maggie, visibly upset, doubled down. She told me that just because I had lost my baby didn't mean I could now give those things to hers as hand-me-downs, and that her baby deserved better than that. Her words were sharp and cut deep, and I was almost in tears. That's when Aaron stepped in. With a firm but calm tone, he interrupted, addressing Maggie directly. He made it clear that my intentions were never to hurt her or upset her, and that I had only given her the shawl as my way of trying to find healing, while also showing how much I cared for her and her baby. Aaron then pointed out that if Maggie didn't like the gift, she could have spoken to me privately about it afterwards. There was no need for her to insult and embarrass me in front of everyone like that. He acknowledged the situation was sensitive, but emphasized that it didn't justify her reaction, especially in front of our family and friends. Maggie seemed taken aback by Aaron's directness, and I could see the tension in her face. The rest of the guests looked uncomfortable, unsure of what to say or do. One of my cousins, sensing the tension, stepped in to support Aaron, urging Maggie to let the matter go. I felt completely blindsided and defeated. I offered to order something nice for her baby and have it delivered later, hoping to mend the rift. But Maggie just scoffed and told me not to bother. Her anger felt disproportionate, and it made me sad to see her so upset over something that had genuinely come from my heart. I started to feel really sick to my stomach, overwhelmed by guilt and confusion. Thankfully, as my mother opened another gift, the focus shifted, and the conversation moved on. But I couldn't shake the heaviness. I wanted the day to be joyful for Maggie, but all I could think about was how my gift had unintentionally created this rift. Later, when everyone started serving themselves food, I decided to try to apologize to Maggie again. I went to the kitchen and filled a plate with her favorite mashed potatoes and chicken, just how she liked it. When I brought it to her, I said I was sorry again, hoping she could move past my mistake and see how much I genuinely cared. But Maggie barely acknowledged me, simply taking the plate without a word. Feeling rejected, I went to sit beside Aaron, looking for a bit of comfort. We were quietly eating when suddenly, we heard Maggie coughing loudly repeatedly. We all turned to see her gesturing to her throat, her face turning red and swollen as she struggled to breathe. Panic surged through me. Something was seriously wrong. I rushed to her side while my mother called 911. Paramedics arrived, and my sister was rushed to the hospital. My parents, Aaron, Tyler, and I all rushed to be there. At the hospital, doctors informed us Maggie had a severe allergic reaction. Now, Maggie is allergic to lobsters, and there had been some at the barbecue, but Tyler had assured everyone he had been very careful not to mix up the grills. I had specifically given Maggie a plate that only contained mashed potatoes and chicken, so I knew I hadn't given her anything harmful. But when Maggie recovered and was coherent enough to speak, she started accusing me of poisoning her. She told my parents how I had been the one to give her food after she had insulted me, so I must have done something to it that triggered her allergic reaction. I was completely baffled. How could she think I would do something so malicious? I argued that I would never harm her or her baby, and it was unfathomable that she would even suggest it. Yet she refused to believe me. In a fit of rage, she screamed at me to get out of her hospital room. Aaron and I exchanged stunned glances and quickly left, not wanting to escalate the situation further. Since that day, everything has spiraled out of control. My parents, siding with Maggie, have placed the blame squarely on me for the entire incident. They believe I somehow endangered her and her baby, and other family members have caught wind of the drama. Suddenly, I'm being accused of being jealous of Maggie's pregnancy, and that I might have allowed that jealousy to cloud my judgment and harm her. The notion that I would ever act on those feelings in such a harmful way is absurd to me, yet somehow people are buying into it. My only fault was giving her that plate of food. I swear I never gave her any lobsters, but somehow I am now being blamed for everything. It's making me feel so guilty, and now my parents are pushing me to admit to everything and apologize to Maggie. They're saying I'm stressing my sister out by escalating the situation unnecessarily, when she's already so vulnerable due to her pregnancy. Update 1. My post blew up. Wow, I did not expect my post to blow up in a few days. First of all, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has reached out with words of support for my loss. Your kindness means the world to me. I also appreciate that many understand my intentions behind gifting the shawl to Maggie. I truly wanted to give her something beautiful and meaningful, and did not expect her to take it the wrong way. She is clearly resentful of me because of the attention I've been receiving due to my miscarriage. I wish she could have talked to me about it and resolved her feelings rather than let it fester. Now, addressing the main issue. I have refused to apologize and have stood by my words. This has led Maggie to publicly accuse me on her social media of trying to poison her food. She claims she's always been there for me, yet I'm constantly trying to overshadow her, suggesting my jealousy of her pregnancy prompted me to act this way at her baby shower. Reading her post has left me mortified. To resolve this once and for all, Tyler has invited everyone to his place, insisting we need to address the situation face to face before the baby arrives, and this issue becomes even more complicated. My parents have reached out and are encouraging me to go, but Aaron and I are not really certain. Update 2. How the tables have turned. So, Aaron and I begrudgingly decided to join Tyler and Maggie for a sit-down, a last-ditch effort to resolve things. My parents were also there, hoping to mediate. Maggie started by demanding that I apologize and publicly admit that I had, in fact, poisoned her. I scoffed at her accusation and was about to deny it once again when Tyler suddenly stood up, saying he had something to show all of us. Well, guess what? It turned out that Tyler had cameras installed all around his house, capturing everything that had happened during the baby shower. He decided to share the footage with us to clear things up once and for all. When we watched the recording, it showed me giving food to Maggie just as I had described. There were no lobsters anywhere in sight. The footage showed Maggie eating and chatting with others. However, in the middle of her meal, she started looking around and repeatedly asking for sauce. One of my cousins had some sauce on her plate and offered Maggie a chance to dip her chicken in it. Since that cousin was eating lobster, it was definitely a bad idea for Maggie to use the sauce from her plate. Foolishly, my sister dipped her chicken into that sauce. Moments later, Maggie began to cough. Her allergic reaction had clearly been triggered by that sauce. As the video played, I could see my parents' faces pale as they absorbed what had just unfolded. They realized that Maggie had been blaming me for something that wasn't my fault at all, and they had been supporting her. Maggie started to argue, fumbling to justify her claims. She said there's no guarantee that her reaction was caused by eating from my cousin's plate, and insisted that I might have mixed something into her food earlier. However, thanks to Tyler, my parents did not believe her any longer. I yelled at Maggie for publicly defaming me on social media. My husband then threatened her that we would use this footage and sue her for false accusations if she didn't take down her post from social media immediately. My parents' expressions were filled with regret as they turned to me, their eyes filled with sympathy. They apologized for unjustly accusing me. However, I pointed out to my parents that they were very quick to support my sister, and had there been no evidence, they would have probably continued to support her. I turned to my mother and asked her if she would now go around and clarify the situation with other family members, since she had been one of the loudest voices in blaming me. I believed it was important for everyone to know the truth, especially given how much damage had been done. However, my mother tried to brush it off. She said that nobody really cared about who was right or wrong in this situation. What mattered was that I was no longer implicated in what happened to Maggie. I felt that was deeply unfair, and I told her that if she didn't take the initiative to set the record straight and acknowledge Maggie's own responsibility for her allergic reaction, then I couldn't have a real relationship with them anymore. My parents kept trying to de-escalate the situation without really acknowledging their own accountability. Eventually, Aaron and I left the place after taking a copy of the footage from Tyler and thanking him for revealing the truth. Since then, my sister has taken down her post from her social media, but my mother still hasn't clarified to anyone about what really happened, so I am really pissed with her for being okay with me being painted as the villain in this situation. Update 3. A taste of her own medicine. Thanks everyone for your suggestions. In response to everything, I decided to give Maggie a taste of her own medicine. I posted the video Tyler had shown and shared how both my sister and parents had unfairly accused me of her allergic reaction. I highlighted how Maggie was careless enough to eat from someone else's plate and essentially poisoned herself. As expected, the video caused a stir. Many family members who had initially sided with Maggie and blamed me have since called back to apologize. Some are even mocking her now, furious that she endangered herself and put the blame on me without any proof. I plan to take the video down soon now that the damage is done. My parents have called me repeatedly, but I've been ignoring their calls. Aaron and I have decided to go low contact with the family until my parents recognize their mistakes.